We think there's still a lot in this market. We're 36 days or so from the Bitcoin halving, and obviously the ETF demand has exceeded everybody's expectations. So we're risk on at this moment.
For more on the market's action, let's bring in Castle Funds President Peter Eberle. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
All right. Everyone has been waiting for the CPI data to come out. February's inflation data has been much anticipated. We finally got it just, I want to say, almost half an hour ago now. What did you make of the numbers we saw?
Yeah, so as we all know, it came in a little bit higher than consensus estimates. I think the Dow Jones was predicting 3.1% with the analysts that they polled. It came in at 3.2%. Doesn't seem to be negatively impacting equities this morning. I think most people had come to the conclusion that a March rate cut was off the table, really looking at towards summer. So I don't think this one number is going to make such a big difference. I think people are looking at the preferred inflation gauge, which will be released end of the month, I believe, on the 29th, as the next indicator. But since the March rate cut was pretty much off the table, I don't think the impact will be too big.
When you see the numbers that came out this morning, what do you think the Fed's going to do for the rest of 2024? Do you think we're going to see rate cuts? And if so, how many?
I think we will start seeing rate cuts come summertime, July-ish in that area. I think the CME Fed forecast tool is still indicating 2 to 3 rate cuts to the end of the year, and we agree with that.
And so what does that mean for crypto markets?
Any kind of risk-on asset is going to benefit from rate cuts. And, the market has some of that priced in already, but there's a ton of cash that's just sitting in money market accounts that will be negatively impacted by lower rates. And that money will be on the move, seeking returns in other assets, including crypto.
Now, I want to draw on your experience a little bit here. Just looking at the markets this morning, how would you be advising your clients? How would you be allocating a portfolio based on the markets read I just read?
Yeah, so, it doesn't change our outlook as far as allocation. We're fairly risk on right now anyway, heavily in the crypto space, especially with Bitcoin and Ethereum. We are a commodity pool operator, so we tend to go towards those two assets primarily. We think there's still a lot in this market. We're 36 days or so from the Bitcoin halving, and obviously the ETF demand has exceeded everybody's expectations. So we're risk on at this moment.
We have the halving coming up. You just mentioned that we hit an all-time high recently. What do you think Bitcoin's going to look like for the rest of 2024? How do you think the price is going to react to the halving in just under 40 days?
Yeah, so this halving is unique in that we have this extra demand from these ETFs, getting 500 million in inflows of capital a day still now, which is fairly incredible. And after the halving, the new supply drops from 900 Bitcoin down to 450 Bitcoin a day. That obviously is going to have a huge impact on the supply side. We think this bull run has strong legs. We think we're in the early part of it. Historically, really, the bull markets didn't kick off until the halving. Here we are 2 months, 3 months ahead of the halving and seriously in a bull market. So we expect great things over the next 12 to 18 months.
You mentioned ETF inflows. They are kind of outstanding. We've spoken to a lot of guests on this show who've said, they expected it to be successful, but didn't expect there to be so much interest so quickly. Did you expect to see this with the ETF?
No, so we were expecting about 17 billion in inflows for the entire year, and we're at over 10 billion in 2 very short months. It's exceeded everybody's expectations. What'll be interesting here in April is when these funds and these pension funds and other investors start reporting what their holdings are. Right now, we have no idea who is actually buying the ETFs, right? Those will come out in April, and it'll be very telling.
Something else we talk a lot about on the show is the potential for a spot ETH ETF. How are you anticipating that? Do you think we'll see an approval in May? And are you seeing demand for something like an ETH ETF?
The demand side is definitely there. I think there's hunger for the product. Whether or not that'll be approved so quickly is a whole different story. From seeing what we're seeing out there, the SEC is not as engaged with the ETF sponsors on this as what we saw in the months leading up to the Bitcoin ETF approval. They were giving a lot of feedback, asking for restatements on certain key issues like the cash creates and things like that. We're not hearing that. They're very, very quiet, which makes us kind of lean towards another delay, possibly for months, possibly until the election.
It's interesting you say that, because when people were skeptical about the spot Bitcoin ETF, one of the prevailing arguments I heard was, yeah, but BlackRock has applied for a spot Bitcoin ETF, and BlackRock has also applied for a spot ETH ETF. Do you think that gives it a little bit more legs, that the largest asset manager in the world, who maybe potentially knows something, has put in an application for this product?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have an influence. There's no doubt. I'm not saying that, but as of November of last year, I think most of us were 90% certain that the Bitcoin ETF was happening. And it was because of the back and forth with the SEC, with BlackRock, with Fidelity, all of these, right? We have the same sponsors trying to work through this with the ETH ETF. So they know how to get it done. There's no doubt about that. It's just that the SEC is not engaging in the same way. And that's why we're a little bit skeptical, at least in the short term. I think in the long term, it will happen. Certainly, ETH has a better chance of getting an ETF than any of the other crypto coins out there, because they have a listed product, a futures listed product on the CME in the US, which is a regulated product.
All right, so maybe an ETH ETF at some point, but you're not super bullish on. We've heard some folks come on the show and talk about an XRP ETF or a Solana ETF. It sounds like you think maybe that's in a far future from now.
I think that is in the far future. If the CME starts listing some of these other, then that would be more likely. But I don't see something that's not listed on any stock or commodity exchange being approved for an ETF.
Turning now away from Bitcoin and Ether, any other crypto assets that are catching your eye?
We're heavily focused on the top tier. So we certainly keep an eye on Solana and XRP and Cardano and Polygon. XRP obviously has a lot coming soon, we believe, in the legal process with the SEC. So that could certainly be a huge benefit or a detriment to the markets in general, right? So the settlement were to occur, obviously that could be very bullish. There's also the SEC lawsuit against Coinbase, which we're all keeping an eye on. So there are big developments within all of crypto right now.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Peter, thank you so much for joining Markets Daily today.
Thanks for having me.
That was Castle Fund's president, Peter Eberle. That's it for today's show.